Alrighty, my friends, welcome back to the third installation of the videos for this week. So we've talked about some other creatures that are part of the Nekton group, right? So we got birds, we got reptiles, and now we're talking about the various fish. So we started with jawless fish, sharks, skates, and rays, and now we're going to finish off here talking about the largest varietal of fish out there. So, bony fish. So more than 3/4 of all of the fish in the ocean live in coastal waters. But because of the absolute insane diversity that exists, there is an incredible array of adaptations to various environments. The way that you can think about this one here is like, we have the coastal polar regions, which, have species of fish that need to be adapted to cold water. And then like down here, we have our mid-latitudes, so we get warmer in the summer but cool in the winter time, and so the water can have an impact on that as well, and fish can only be in certain locations, versus like tropical waters, right? You can think of like Hawaii or even warmer tropical waters like the Great Barrier Reef. And then also in this sense, we need to think about animals that live at the surface versus animals that live in the middle of the water column versus the animals that live all the way down at the bottom of the ocean, right? So there's just so many different things to consider when we're talking about the surface of our planet and the various adaptations for that. So like, for example, we don't have coral reefs here because our water is too cold, right? So we have just completely different species of fish. We don't naturally have like coral reef species like clownfish or blue tangs, so like marlin and dory from Finding Nemo or things like that. So because our water is just not suitable for them to live here. All bony fish possess gills that allow for an exchange of oxygen and CO2 with seawater. And in a couple of slides, I actually have like a breakdown of what that looks like. It's actually really fascinating if you are into like the biological side of things. And most fish possess a swim bladder in order to maintain buoyancy. So if you remember when we talked about various adaptations and like for buoyancy purposes, they either have lungs or a swim bladder. And if they are fish that need to live in the deep oceans, then there's going to be proteins that surround that swim bladder in order to protect it from basically deteriorating in a way. So basically, like any fish that you have probably eaten, if you eat fish, is bony fish. Any and all of them. There's lots of different examples out there. And this really includes a lot of different fish. So here's just a very, very small sub-selection of fish that are out there. So this little cutie here, this is an emperor angelfish, and then this is a butterfly fish. These can be pretty common in like coral reef areas. They're really small but very beautiful in color. This little cutie right here, this is a wolf eel. We actually have these here in California. They are a carnivore, and they have incredibly strong jaws and pretty long teeth. This little cutie here is a seahorse. So their scales are actually modified in order to form a protective armor. Unfortunately, seahorse populations are on the decline because of their slow reproduction rate, and they're not likely to support increasing harvests for aquariums, traditional medicine, and gourmet dishes. Actually thinking about that is like a really common issue that's happening right now for anyone who does anything for like seawater aquariums, like what's it called, collecting in a way. So what's happening is, and I had a student do a project about this last semester, 2 semesters ago, but basically like people are going to the tropical coral reefs and taking the fish out of their environment and bringing them back home for them to have there, or maybe not like individual people, but like it's a whole ass industry. And so that's really unfortunate. I know we don't really talk about that a whole lot in this class, but it is something that is definitely happening. And more species actually die in process of transportation because oftentimes they're flown. And if you take a fish from a very pressurized area and then you put it in a plane which has much lower pressure, you're probably not going to do the fish any good. So it's pretty bad, pretty horrendous, actually. But what's also really interesting with seahorses is the males are the ones that actually carry the babies. So that's kind of a neat thing. Then the last little guy, this is a red snapper. This is a coastal rocky area fish. It's very often used for food, for human consumption. Like we wouldn't necessarily eat these fishies here, but red snapper we do. It's a very stinky fish when you cook with it, but it is incredibly delicious, either raw or cooked. It's you can find red snapper at like H Mart or Ranch Market 99. Where I love the fresh fish selections at those stores. It's amazing. And here are just some more examples. So on the left, this is that process of the exchange of oxygen and CO2 in their gills. You're not going to be required, I don't think, to really know like the full mechanics behind it, but I just think it's really interesting the process, because they're like, you know, they're dealing with salt and they're dealing with oxygen and CO2. And so just like humans, how we breathe in oxygen and breathe out CO2, fish, in a sense, do the same thing, which is really fascinating. So here are some sketched examples of some other various bony fish that you may be familiar with. One of them being the bluefin tuna. Bluefin tuna are an incredible animal. They can swoosh through the water. They move very fast. We are unfortunately overfishing them to near extinction, which really sucks because they're such an incredible animal. And then we have our coho salmon. So salmon exists in several different varieties. There's like coho salmon, Atlantic salmon, Chinook salmon. And they look different in their facial structure, but they're all salmon. And then we have our ocean perch here as well, often a type of fish that we eat. This is a Greenland halibut. We actually have halibut here in California as well. The local fishermen here fish for them quite often. So if you ever want to go fishing with any of the local fishermen, you will likely be catching halibut at the moment. And then this is also a Dover sole. So if you remember when we talked about the different categories of beings in the oceans, we talked about nectobenthos, which are swimmers, but they tend to exist near the bottom as well. So Dover soles and the Greenland halibut are really good examples of nectobenthos. Next up, we have these two little cuties here. These are the Pacific herring and the northern anchovy. If you ever want to consider, or if you want to consider making your fish eating more sustainable, it's better to fish or to eat the smaller fish because there's more of them, right? If you remember when we talked about abundance versus size, the smaller the creature, the more of them we have. There's so many Pacific herring and northern anchovies that do get fed on very heavily by like dolphins and different types of whales and things like that, and different types of fish. But these, if you just want to make your fish eating more sustainable, then consider switching to eating fish that are smaller. I really, really personally do not like anchovies, herrings, or sardines, so that one's just a little bit on the end for me. Okay, and it's funny, my boyfriend and I have very, very similar palates with most food except for pizza. So He loves anchovies on pizza. I cannot stand anchovies on pizza. So whenever we order pizza, we always have to order 2 separate pizzas. Anyways, so next up, still in terms of bony fish, but thinking in the deeper oceans, we have our various deep sea species. So what's really kind of fascinating here, if we remember, talking about the different layers of the water where there's some light and maybe sometimes not very much light, and then really, really not a whole lot of light at all the further down the water column you go. So the mesopelagic layer can be where there's like that steep thermocline, but it has enough energy in it to be able to support vast schools of small luminous fish, and largemouth hinged jaws and needle-like teeth. And most species of deep sea species have bioluminescent organs. So here's just some various types of deep sea creatures that are out there. And then we have the bathypelagic zone, which has very, very little food. Thus, the fish that live there are very, very small. There is some deep sea gigantism that can happen, but mostly these fish are really small. Like when I first learned about anglerfish, I thought that they were like the coolest thing ever, and in my mind, I thought that they were gigantic, but it turns out anglerfish are actually really small. A lot of the deep sea fish species tend to be mostly black in color with some can have smaller eyes, and really huge mouths and expandable stomachs. They have to breathe really, really slowly, and their bodies have high water and low protein content. So we don't really fish for deep sea fish. Like there's not enough protein in them for us to harvest them with any sort of like sustainability. It wouldn't make any sense, right? There's so little protein that it's like all that work to go down and get deep sea fish. It's kind of like, okay, cool. What's also really fascinating about various deep sea species is they can go for very, very long periods without feeding. So I'm going to go back a slide maybe real quick. So the bathypelagic zone is kind of like not entirely in the deep, but about our average depths, right? If you remember, our average depth of the oceans is about 4,000 meters. And yeah, really, really fascinating creatures. So, and if we remember, anglerfish, they have a really interesting mating situation in that males, they spend their whole life just looking for a female. And once they find the female, they munch onto the female. And she will wait until she is ready for that sperm. So in that process, the male will basically just fuse to the female and will never get off, unfortunately. And so then whenever the female wants the sperm, she'll just go ahead and take it on in, and then the rest is history, which is very strange. What an evolutionary feat. So when we return together, we will go into vast detail about marine mammals. And then we'll finish up we'll finish up the whole semester talking about various benthic animals and animals that live along the seafloor. So thank you again so much for your time and participation in this class, and I will see you all on the flip.